Welcome to Mental Health Momentum, a Silicon Slopes podcast. I'm Dr. David Morgan. I'm a licensed psychologist and the director of mental health awareness here at Silicon Slopes. On this podcast, we talk about mental health issues in business and beyond, and we look for solutions. I'm going to introduce my guest to you today. This is Ronda Davis. Hello, Ronda.
Hello, thank you.
How did we get connected? It was through a mutual friend. Do you remember?
Yeah, Julie Jenke.
Oh, yes.
So shout out to her in Mill Creek City Lifestyle.
Totally.
Yeah, she was here.
She was here a few months ago. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and she
Excellent.
just raved about you, and so she connected us.
And then she raved about you to me.
Oh, that's great.
Okay.
Thank you, Julie.
So here we are. Thanks. It's sponsored by Julie Jenke,
Yeah.
this episode. Yeah.
She'll appreciate it.
Let me tell you a little bit about Ronda. She is an LCSW, a trauma therapist, a speaker, and the founder of Healing Feathers, which is a trauma-informed group practice devoted to helping people move from survival mode into deep, sustainable healing. Her work is rooted in the understanding that our past experiences shape our nervous systems, our beliefs about ourselves, and the way we show up in relationships, work, and in life. Her path to this work is clinical and deeply personal. After the loss of her father, grief became a turning point that reshaped her understanding of healing, presence, and purpose, which led her to explore the connection between emotional pain, the body, and the stories that we carry. And that inspired the creation of Healing Feathers, a name symbolizing guidance, connection, and the reminder that we are never as alone as we feel. She specializes in complex trauma, grief, and inner child healing, blending EMDR, parts work, somatic approaches, breath work, and psychedelic-assisted therapy to support more meaningful transformation. She helps clients understand that they are not broken, they adapted, and that healing is about learning it's safe to live beyond survival. And she's also expanded her work beyond the therapy room into speaking to businesses, organizations, and groups. She teaches professionals how to recognize the negative belief systems and old patterns that keep them feeling stuck, overwhelmed, and burned out. By helping people build confidence, regulate their nervous systems, and shift fear-based thinking, her work supports greater productivity, healthy work environments, and more balanced relationship with performance. Thank you for being here. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, that was a mouthful.
Well, you've done so much stuff, so of course, yeah. What else are we going to say?
Yeah.
I always like to start talking about the kind of the person's own experience with mental health, which you kind of mentioned a little bit with your father. So, and is that kind of, we'll talk a little bit about that and what kind of got you into mental health in the first place, into the profession.
Yeah. It's a long answer, but the short version is, honestly, it started from the day of my birth. So I was born with a mother who was in prison. And so at a really early age, just because of my childhood and a lot of the stigmas that were, put upon me back in the 90s, I knew that I wanted to help people. And so I don't know what it was, but I knew at a young age that I was going to be a therapist and that I wanted to help people. I really wanted to be, a voice to everyone else, especially kids that didn't come from these normal families. And I really wanted to show them that just because you come from chaos, trauma, abuse, neglect, that you don't have to follow in those footsteps. So it really started way back when. And then after losing my dad, that was really when I put my goal forward and I opened my practice. So I've been doing it now for 15 years, both in group practices. I've done substance abuse, I've done residential. But it really, I would say, I think everything solidified and came to the surface after the loss of my dad.
It's interesting, even in like substance use issues and that, trauma is always a factor, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that you could probably in just about every single therapeutic situation address trauma either in a small way or a big way, and you'd hit on something. I think everyone's been through it, and some obviously more significantly than others. And I'm not trying to like say, oh, everyone's got it and that makes yours less, because some people are heavily traumatized.
Yeah.
But life is traumatic. There's just stuff that happens all the time to all of us that we have to learn to deal with.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. We kind of put ourselves in these holes where we think either it was our fault or we shouldn't have gone through that, or and then we get stuck.
Yeah.
And moving forward is so important.
Yeah. And I think trauma is a scary word.
Yes.
It's sometimes overused in our field. And to your point, everyone talks about everyone has trauma. But to a point, everyone does. I mean, I haven't met a person, whether it's a client, a colleague, a business partner, that hasn't had some type of trauma in their life. And to your point, some big, some small. But I think at the end of the day, it's what keeps us stuck in our patterns. It's what keeps the limiting beliefs part of our life, our day to day. And it affects us, not just day to day with our families and friends, but in our work, in our environment, in our ability to set goals and accomplish them. And And I just like, that's what I've become so passionate about the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, really talking to people more about of your story matters, and it doesn't matter big or small. It deserves a chance to be told. And there are therapeutic tools that actually can help unbreak the patterns, unbreak the cycle, whatever that is that really can help you move forward in your life.
Yeah. Do you have a better word than trauma? Do you have something that you use? I'm just curious. I mean, maybe you don't, but
I mean, not really. Like,
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
word that I'm not afraid to use.
Yeah, yeah.
And that I think the way I show up in my sessions, I, in a way, normalize it
Yes.
and don't make it this big, scary word that we can't use. But, you know, I also talk about experiences. I would say trauma and experiences, because some people, even my clients that I work with, they don't like the word trauma. They don't
Right.
like to say they've been traumatized. And so we talk about, you know, big life experiences and same result, but different meaning, different vocabulary word.
It does speak to the stigma, though, right?
Yeah.
That even the word itself just kind of communicates this. It communicates victimhood. It communicates
Yeah.
disempowerment, and
And weakness. I think
Yeah,
that
exactly,
in males,
yeah.
right, in the world that we live in,
especially sure for
having a
males who've
male
been
come in
traumatized.
and say,
Yeah.
yep. And I think that layer of vulnerability, I don't know a male that's going to come to therapy and say, Rhonda, I need your help. I've been traumatized.
Right.
Not at all.
They just,
You know?
It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I dealt with a lot of individuals like that, but it was through the criminal justice system,
Yeah.
and we helped process trauma. But the reason they got there is because they had gone out and done something they shouldn't, and they ended up in a situation where they had to come in and talk about it.
Yeah.
But in almost every case, there had been some sort of, significant negative life experience that had influenced their choices.
Yeah.
They're still their choices. They still make their choices, but our choices rarely exist without some sort of influence.
Yeah. And I think the other thing, a lot of people have a misconception about trauma. A lot of people hear the word and they think it has to be some big life event or some big catastrophe. When I can't tell you how many clients, especially talking to anxiety or just a dysregulated nervous system, it comes down to just getting bullied in school, their parents getting a divorce, you losing your job. I mean, sometimes when we talk about trauma, it isn't this big, terrible life chaos catastrophe. It's simple things in our life that all of us go through.
And then, like you said, we get that dysregulated nervous system.
Yeah.
And it seems like in today's society, I don't know, is it easier to stay in dysregulation than it has been before? What do you think?
I think going back to the victim, I think nowadays it's really easy to stay as the victim. I also think, and you've probably seen this with your clients, so many people want an instantaneous result.
Yes.
They want a solution. And, there's people that come to therapy. There's people that have been in therapy for years and they want a solution when really the answer is to work through, honor the emotions, honor that experience, both mentally and physically in your body. And that, the statistically of number of people that want to do that, it's hard. I hear that a lot. And at my practice at Healing Feathers, we do graduate clients, and it doesn't mean that their healing is done.
Right.
But for them
Maybe
in that
see
moment,
you again in 2 years. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
Yeah. And I think with that, there's a misconception that you're going to be stuck in therapy.
Right.
If you go, you're going to be stuck and it's a life sentence that you're never going to get out of. But everyone goes through trauma. Everyone's going to go through hard periods. And it's honestly something I don't think we need to be afraid of because it's happening to you and me and everyone, you're around.
Yeah.
Whether you want to admit it or not is a different situation, but it's happening.
I see periodically advertisements for lesser trained people trying to get involved in mental health, and they say things like, are you tired of therapy taking so long? Are you tired of this? Because come over here and we have the 21-day solution.
Yeah.
And I go, well, that sounds lovely.
I want to join.
Yeah,
Sign me up for that too.
And I'm like, this is the biggest load of baloney that I've ever heard. There was a movie in the 1990s called City Slickers, and it was about some guys that go on a dude ranch and they drive cattle. And they're on it with like this real legit cowboy played by Jack Palance. And they're just these guys, they're wearing, New York Yankees caps and stuff like that. And at one point, Billy Crystal is one of the actors in it. And he ends up alone with this cowboy that's called Curly. And Curly says to Billy Crystal, he says, you city slickers are all the same. He says, you spend 50 weeks every year tying your rope into knots, and you expect to come here in 2 weeks and get it all untied.
Yeah.
And, because they think, I'll just go to this dude ranch and I'll be fine.
Yeah.
And I think that's the misconception, is that hard things, difficult things require hard, difficult solutions.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's the bad news. I think that's the good news too, because then you
Yeah.
can say, look what I did.
Yeah.
To the clients that you graduate, you can say, look at what you did. And it
Yeah.
didn't take 21 days.
Yeah.
It took 21 weeks or 21 months
years.
or 21 years. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and I think that is right. The speaking gigs that I do, or some of the speaking arrangements that I've gone to, right? Most people want to listen to a motivational speaker over a therapist.
That's right.
And when it comes down to it, it's because that motivational speaker has that 21-day program that promises this instant solution. And then 6 months, they're like, why am I repeating the same problems? You're repeating the same patterns because you haven't healed whatever's underneath, whatever is keeping you stuck. And, it's a great business model, but it doesn't work. I mean,
That's right.
it's that Band-Aid approach that people can put on temporarily. And sometimes in our lives, depending on experience, that's what you need. But when you want to get out of your patterns, when you want to be unstuck, you have to dig through the layers. There's just no other option.
And mental health is so nuanced anyway. The challenges that we can have with our mental health vary from things that can be fixed by a Band-Aid to things that need to be fixed with the equivalent of like open heart surgery.
Mm-hmm.
And I think too often we have a hard time understanding that ourselves, just as kind of, normal lay people. We tend to view mental health in a dichotomous way. Either you have it or you don't.
Yeah.
And instead of like our physical health, I don't run to the doctor if I scratch my finger and it starts to bleed. I go get a Band-Aid from the cupboard. But like you said, with mental health, they're afraid of the therapeutic thing. They think I'm always going to be this way. Instead of, you might go talk to someone and they might say, you know what, this is a totally normal reaction to what you're going through. I don't think you need therapy at all. Here's some things that maybe you can benefit from, get a little more sunshine, a little more exercise, and you'll be fine. Or it could be, wow, I'm so glad you're here because this is the type of thing that usually you need another person, a trained person to help you through.
Well, and I think everyone needs support. And if it can't be your family sometimes, and I've had that where it's because of your family that you need the support elsewhere.
Right, yeah.
And that's what therapy's for. Having that assistance to have someone, should be non-biased, but sit in front of you and just listen and help you go through it and feel it and talk about potential solutions. Yeah. I mean, that's what really we're here for. But
we try to be non-biased, don't we? I know.
Yeah.
It's trickier than it looks, but
absolutely.
But with practice, it gets better,
Yeah, it does.
Be that kind of objective second party. So Healing Feathers. So we were just talking about this before the podcast. So you started it yourself and now you've grown it. Tell us about it.
Yeah. So I started it actually in 2019. It was, again, just kind of a childhood goal that I had. And after losing my dad, it was like his year anniversary, almost to the date. I swear he slapped me and was like, what are you doing with your life?
Right.
I wasn't grieving well, as most people don't. Yeah. He was, my best friend. And so that year after losing him, I was really lost and I really didn't care. I was in a classic depression where, like, what else do I have to lose? Take my job, take, whatever from me. And so, a year later, it slapped me where I needed either to do it or I was going to probably up and move and leave and just throw everything else away. So I started in 2019 and Had
you already got your education by then?
Yeah.
Okay.
I graduated with my master's in 2015.
Okay.
So I had been practicing it. It had almost been 5 years at a group practice. So I'd already built a reputation. I was already very involved in the community and different referral sources. And that's honestly what made me have a little bit more confidence, is that I could do it at that old practice. I knew I could do it for myself. And that's ultimately what made me grow pretty rapidly, is my reputation. So I had started in July of that year, and by October I was on a 6-month waiting list. And that was where I was like, okay, I need to come up with a business plan.
Yeah.
I need to actually figure out what I'm doing. I brought on my first employee about 6 months later. And now we're here to be our 7th year this year in business. And I have a total of 7 employees. They're all fantastic. We're considered a non-traditional trauma-informed office. So we do specialize in more of the trauma-informed practices. And because of that, we take a lot of the harder cases.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Speaking of trauma, a lot of people assume that therapy is what you see in the TV shows of, tell me about your day, tell me about how you're feeling.
Yeah.
We get the people that come, talk about just terrible losses, terrible catastrophes, terrible abuse and neglect, and my team is pretty incredible that we, it's hard day to day, back to back, but every single client we thoroughly enjoy working with, sitting with, helping. I think it's more meaningful than, not to say that, if you have a lower scale of trauma that you can't seek us out or can't seek therapy. But those type of people that know that their scars are years, decades deep, for them to trust us with their healing, it is really remarkable, and it's more meaningful work than I ever would have imagined. So yeah, we're still going strong. That's
amazing. And starting a business as a mental health professional, it's the worst because we get no training on that. Every single mental health, master's or doctoral program should have one class in entrepreneurship, because we're just like, oh, I guess I'm starting a business now and I don't know what I'm doing.
And, I really didn't. I had a reputation, luckily, by reaching out to my referral sources, and they, knock on wood, still to refer to me, and that's what's made the success. But I also know not very other practice owners have that luck. I mean, I work with quite a few colleagues that call me all the time of how do you keep this? And honestly, it's all about building community and connection. I'm one who, I will help you or be part of an event just to build that community and collaboration. I don't have an ulterior motive other than just I want to help as many people as possible. And it luckily has stuck.
What's the relationship with connection and helping people resolve trauma? What have you found with that?
I don't think you can heal without it. So many people feel so lonely. And that's one thing so many people have told me is, you don't understand because you haven't been through this. Some of them, absolutely, I haven't, but some of them, I have, and not that I self-disclose all the time, but I think that's the thing I tell people. And that's the thing that I think I connect with so many people of, you're right. I wasn't there that day. I don't know what this experience is like for you, but that doesn't mean I can't have empathy and help be part of your story. And so when we do workshops, when we run groups, when we just sit and have a conversation, ultimately, you don't really care if I've been through the experience. You just want to make sure I can sit and be okay with you in that and hold the space and be able to nod my head and validate and say, yeah, it really sucks. You have been traumatized. You have been abandoned. I get you. I feel you. I'm here. I'm in this thick of the mud with you. And I think that's missing in our field. Speaking of school, they teach us to be so black and white and almost like that computerized robot where I just nod my head and say, and how does that make you feel? Where I'm like, no, I can look at you and be like, wow, how was that for you? And also that really sucks. So I think that building community, again, not necessarily to disclose details or understand it, but just to sit in that room and know that other people will hold that energy for you is important and non-negotiable in your healing.
Well, and chances are any one of us, while we may not have gone through the exact similar experience than that person did, we've had experiences where we felt the same types of resultant emotions, right? I remember years ago, I was speaking at a conference that was for people who've been divorced. And I was there, and I haven't been divorced. I've been married for almost 35 years now. And I remember one of the people, they raised their hand and they said, have you been divorced? And I said, no. And I said, so yes, you're right. There is a part of your experience that I do not understand. I said, however, I've been disappointed. I've been betrayed. I've been humiliated. I mean, so many of the experiences that they've gone through as well, or those emotions they've felt. And maybe I haven't felt them at the same intensity. Maybe I have, and it just came through a different venue instead of through the experience of divorce. So I think that when we say people don't understand me, they probably do more than you know.
Well, and I think the biggest thing is I just validate of, you're right. I haven't been divorced, but tell me about what it's like for you.
Exactly.
I mean, most people at the end of the day just want your story to be told. You want to be listened to. You want to be validated. So the best thing we can do is be like, you're right. I don't know what that is, but can you tell me what it's like for you? Where are you at? I mean, I think it sounds simple, but really I'm like, that's all it is. When I talk to friends or clients, I mean, when I very first started out, I worked with a very complex case. Her mom was very much her caregiver. And I'll never forget this session. Mom came in really, really heated. And this was an older adult. She was probably in her 30s. Her mom came in and said, you don't understand. She has this and this and this and this. Have you ever had them? And I literally was like, girl, I've worked in substance abuse. I've worked in a lot of things. Like, no, I haven't. to some degree, yeah, there are some of those things that I can resonate with, but I've never had that. Doesn't mean I can't help her. And there is, I think, that misconception in the mental health of if you don't have this diagnosis, if you've never worked with this, you have no idea what you're going to get yourself into. I don't really believe that. I think that there's ways we can help one another by sharing a story, asking the right questions, and listening, that you can change someone's life.
Absolutely. Well, in the medical field, right? I mean, you don't have to, you have to have gone through open heart surgery to be a cardiologist, right? Not necessarily, right? I mean, I think it can lend maybe some extra depth of empathy, but you can still empathize with people on a very substantive level, even without having experienced exactly what they've experienced. So that's amazing. So being a trauma expert, complex PTSD, which is not a actual diagnosis yet, but we use it like it. What do you think? Is it legit? Is it differentiated enough from PTSD? Now we're talking
shop. It's a complicated question. Well, I think obviously, yes, I do think that it's real. I mean, I can say that because I've worked with hundreds of people that have had that. I think people don't understand enough about PTSD to really understand sometimes what they're talking about. There's still so many people that I work with that have that stigma again of, I'll never diagnose a client with PTSD because they weren't in a war, they haven't been in this complex accident, where it's not that anymore.
Yeah, it's true.
So I do think that it's real. I think that, bless our DSM, but our DSM is also one of those questionable records that, you can bend and twist the symptoms as what you want to fit into a category. And, it's also presenting day to day. You can come into me today and you may fit in that diagnosis. And then tomorrow it may look black and white different depending on where you're at. So that's one thing I tell people, don't get hung up on diagnosis. Because at the end of the day, yes, it's needed for me to know how to treat you and to give you the right modalities, but it can change, and it changes in our field really, really quickly. And it's not like a cancer diagnosis or a blood pressure test where there's hard facts, hard numbers that we can really regulate or monitor. It's something that I'm like, how's your anxiety?
Exactly.
How are your flashbacks today? How often are they coming? And that varies. And so I think, yes, it exists. And does it look different than the traditional PTSD? I think to some degree, but I also think it depends on, again, the population you're working with and your bias of the DSM.
Well, Google's been the worst for that, right? Because now everyone types in their symptoms.
Or TikTok. I mean, there's so many people that will come. We now get referrals that'll say, I want to work with a therapist that can work with X, Y, and Z. And sometimes my staff will be like, I've never worked with that. And I'm like, can you sit in front of them and ask where they got their diagnosis? Because they also reported they've never been to therapy. So, and I think people don't realize how close our diagnoses happen. There's one or two symptoms off that differentiate between bipolar and depression. Just because you're depressed doesn't mean you're bipolar.
Absolutely. So, differential diagnosis is an art for sure.
Yeah, and it's like a new language. It's a whole new language.
It is. I tell people the same thing. I'm like, the actual diagnosis itself is just a label that is helpful to mental health professionals to communicate a lot of information very succinctly. So I don't have to tell someone the 8 symptoms of major depressive disorder they have. I can say this client has major depressive disorder, and enough said, and then they can go from there. But the labels themselves, I think, are largely immaterial to treatment and those sorts of things, because you're addressing symptoms anyway. You're saying what's wrong. How do we fix it? How do we how would help this person get to a place of greater healing?
And I think it goes back to that victimizing, right? So many people in our field get stuck of, oh, I'm depressed, and you're forever depressed if you get that diagnosis. Where I'm like, okay, if you have diabetes, sure, it may be a life sentence, but it also, if you have low insulin, may only last today.
That's right.
Like, why are we just a depressed person if you got it diagnosed 10 years ago? Also, have you gotten a re-diagnosis? Have you continued your treatment? There's so much about our field that I just think looks so differently, and it sometimes keeps people really, really stuck with having that label.
I'll have people come in sometimes and I'll say, well, they've been in counseling before. I say, well, do you have any diagnoses? And they'll list like 10 different diagnoses. And I'm like, how did you walk in here? With all that stuff. And then they'll say, oh, well, I got this one when I was 6, and this one when I was 10, and this one when I was 14. And so not only do you have those things that may not be the case now, there's a lot of crummy diagnosis out there too. People who are untrained or poorly trained to diagnose. And so when you combine the fact that things change over time, Plus, whether the diagnosis was valid in the first place, I mean, probably 80% of the diagnoses out there that people think they have are probably wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yet they carry the stigma of it,
Yeah.
and it weighs on them as if it's actually happening. So
Yeah.
I know. Okay, one more thing before we end here, because I love this statement. You said, "You are not broken, you adapted. You are worthy of anything you set your mind to." Just tell me about that. Like, how does that, because that kind of defines what you do.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes back to that trauma. I think so many people have normalized of I was forced to be the responsible one, the reliable one, the strong one in my family because of trauma or abuse or neglect. And it's a trauma response, that adaptation, the being the dependable one that everyone always calls on isn't who you are. It's a role that you play. And it's an adaptation that came from what you went through, and it doesn't define you. It's a strength that sometimes we can look at as a strength in a role that you're stepping into, but it's not who you are.
Yeah.
And I think that with my work, whether it's speaking engagements, it's clients, it's friends, getting to know your authentic self and reconnecting with that part of you is the most powerful thing you can do in your healing, and not just allowing yourself to be told by a story or a survival technique.
That's amazing. You're doing such good work, Rhonda.
Thank
you so much. I know why you have a waiting list, because people are.
Oh, thank you.
Because I think it's easy to connect with you, and that's amazing. If people want to learn more about like what you do, either in the speaking or the Healing Feathers, where can they go?
Yeah, just go on my website, healingfeatherstherapy.com. There's information about our website if you wanted to become a client with us, or any of the personal things that I do with the workshops, speaking, all of that.
Awesome.
So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very, very much.
Yeah.
And thanks everyone for listening today. Remember that change starts with you, and together we can increase our mental health momentum.